Let me say welcome to those of you listening to Classic Radio 105.5, 105.9 on the FM dial. Those of you viewing us via GBN TV, good morning to you also. Hope all is well. Those of you via social media platforms, hope all is well with you. Wherever part of the world you're listening, you're probably locally also listening to Classic Radio and viewing via GBN TV. Let me say good morning to Mr. Sylvan McIntyre with us this morning. Mr. McIntyre, good morning and welcome, sir. How are you doing this morning?
Yeah, good morning to you, GT, and a pleasant good morning to all those who are within the hearing and viewing of my voice and presence. I'm doing good.
All right.
Yeah, I'm doing good.
It's been a nice, calm weekend for me for some reason.
Yeah.
You know, some weekends you get, I decided I was going to go nowhere this weekend. You never make that decision, which I ain't going to.
You're planting?
No, I ain't plant anything. Okay. But I just decided, hey, I'm not going to leave the house this weekend.
Right.
I just made that decision and I went nowhere at all besides within the confine of the house. And that was it. I got some really opportunity to rest this weekend.
Yeah, but I don't think you're isolated in that thinking and that feeling.
Yeah.
For varying reasons. There are a number of persons who, for the last couple weekends, kind of are watching and see what's happening in Grenada after we had the spate of crime,
yes,
gun-related violence. Some people just decided, well, I'm not going anywhere. I don't know what's going to happen. So they're waiting and see, looking around.
Yeah.
So it's in a sense
I mean, that didn't come in the direction of how I felt. You understand? I just felt, hey, it's a no leave the house weekend for me.
Right.
It's a no leave the house weekend, and it just rolled out just like that, and I was happy. You know, sometimes you just needed that little solitude of the confinement of your home, and that was it for me.
Actually, I did similar to you to an extent. I used the Corpus Christi time to do a little planting.
Yeah.
Went on the farm. And then this Saturday and Sunday I used for my domestic affairs. Just choose to do things in and around the house.
Well, awesome.
You know, we had some rain as well.
Yeah, we had some rain.
We had some rain, we had a little bit of wind, and so that would give you a check in terms of where you do it. And over the weekend, we had the ushering of the official of the hurricane season, didn't we?
Yes.
So June 1st was it Saturday?
Yep.
And so it came with its own little showers, a reminder that we are in the rainy season, wet season, hurricane season. And it brought us some realities with it. It showed up in some areas. The rain fell heavy enough in some areas to have showed up some of the block drains. Even in my area, all the loose stuff that were hanging around, they came down and just blocked the entrance right onto my driveway to go through. And so I saw, as a matter of fact, I actually took my first rain shower. I went out in the rain, but half naked.
All right.
I started clearing the drains and everything. It was a very nice feeling. Yeah. And I think people welcome not the hurricane season, but they welcome the weather. The weather. Even nature itself, excuse me, it's kind of reacting positively to the season. You can see now the little grass peeping through.
Yeah, you start to see that little green start popping in. And yes, it's so weird that in Grenada, I mean, thank God for the kind of soil that we have and the terrain that we have. Yeah. It gets green to the slightest amount of rain pick up. You see there, and it'll start looking green again.
That's correct. That's correct. So as quickly as it would dry, as quickly as it would return and resuscitate. And it speaks of, you know, how rich and how unique our soil really is. And if we make this better use of it, we can be self-sufficient. And so it speaks to aspect of even more food security and all of that we could produce more things that we want to eat and eat more things that we should. All right, and it's a matter of just applying the necessary things that we need to do, and it could happen. It could happen. Yeah. I mean, there's lots been buzzing around also besides the rain and stuff that we've been getting. Now we thank the Almighty for. What else has been in the news? Well, Regrettably, though, as recently as after midnight last night, are we going to speak of it? My condolences to those who've lost that loved one.
All right.
There was a tragic accident on the Morris Bishop Highway.
All right.
And it was very painful because it happened exactly on the site where my son was tragically killed just over a year ago. It's the same spot. We're going to speak a little bit about that this morning, and we're going to chime in on aspect of the road safety and some of the contributing factors to accidents and the preventable and the non-preventable ones, and have we done enough? And is one life one too many to lose per year? And is that strip of road given the kind of attention that it should? So that would dominate the whole aspect of it.
All right.
And so that is more recent. But as we looked around the region and the Caribbean prepares itself for what is called a hyperactive hurricane season, we've been having nationally through the NADMA system training of persons over the last couple of weeks. As a matter of fact, housing and gender affairs, social development, they've piloted some aspect of that. And through the region, we have been holding our regional discussions on how we can preposition things within the Caribbean should in case one of those hurricanes impact. What are the response mechanism? We have been also trying to figure out what inventory and stores some of the response agency do have, and is there a need to tap up some of them or source them, just in the event that this above average overactive hurricane season, we do feel the effects of it.
All right.
But as it is established, it doesn't take all of them. And as it is also should be understood, that is not just Grenada that is exposed, and if Grenada or any of the other islands exposed, the Caribbean feel the brunt of it, part of the effect. So we want to be holistically prepared. We want to be able to champion our cause and do our national readiness so that we are not caught off guard in terms of our readiness, because economic retardation or setback is something that has its negative impacts on the economy. And the poor and vulnerable are those who are less advantaged. They are the persons who are going to feel it most. And so the technocrats and the technical people and the policy makers are to ensure that the proper things that they are entrusted with, that they shoulder and handle the responsibility towards having better preparedness and mitigation issues addressed.
All right. A question I would like to ask, it always bothers me in thinking about it in a way. The effectiveness of constantly being trained in disaster management from NAGMA and so forth. The effectiveness of it and the importance of it also.
Well,
of constantly individuals being constantly trained.
The need for that.
Yeah.
Well, coincidentally, yesterday evening, Dr. Walters and I were having some conversation because he's due to attend one of the regional conferences on I think it's 20 years after Hurricane Ivan. And part of the issue would be looking at how we've championed the cause for better Caribbean after 2 decades. And we did look at whether we actually built back better and whether we continued with our readiness campaigns and whether our construction industry is better and whether our social construct in terms of our policies and instrument looking at the psychosocial impact of disasters, whether or not we've improved in that light. And with the discussion with him, sometimes you don't sit and go in retrospect and see where you came from and where you could have been and what you need to still do.
Yes.
And I think one of the pillars that I raised specifically was that of safety and security. And we can actually boast about it in terms of where our police force came from, our police forces and our armed forces in the Caribbean, in particular Grenada we were speaking about specifically. What we saw happen to our police force response system in 2004.
Yeah. It's almost crippled to a point,
And what was remarkably done the few months after and 10 months, they were able to implement the changes that they made to their own plans. So, yes, we've been saying that we built back better, we did things differently, and that is true to an extent. I am one of those who could testify because I came through the system and I monitored and walked through, and we can trace the steps along, the coastlines everywhere else that you think we've matched in terms of what we've done differently in building. And the whole aspect of continuous training is one that we cannot shelve in any form or fashion, because training will help you prepare for the next event, and not just in disaster response or disaster readiness, just generally. As we look at our workforce nationally, how we are transitioning from one generation into the other, and how there is the need for continuity in business and everything else. So the need for continuous training has to be an integral part of it, to keep people ready and to ensure that succession planning training forms part of that, so there isn't a lull or a gap in your economic development and any kind of development for that matter. You'd want to ensure that, you know, training is part of it. And to see in terms of training where we could access it, a lot of the times we tend to look outside of our shores, and we tend to believe that we have to import consultants and technocrats
and it's readily available right here.
We do have it.
Yeah.
Quite a number of our locals are trained, and sometimes they may not offer themselves, but the resources there, and we need to be able to access it. Within all of the structures, within the ministries and within the armed forces, within the prison services, etc., you have people who've been outside of Grenada, they've attained the knowledge, and you have people who are homegrown who stayed right here and they develop themselves and they are able to deliver. And you have a ready source that could be tapped into that is often ignored, that the people who've decided to, and by reason of age, retire from active duty. That's a ready resource bank that is there to be tapped into. And a lot of times you have these retired nurses, these retired police officers, teachers, public servants. They're just there. I know some of them who are still contributing. I know one of my good friends is still contributing towards the development of the foreign affairs. You know, she's been contributing behind the scenes in helping the foreign affairs to grow from, and this is a kind of a contribution we need from Grenadians, not to hide behind the walls and behind your doors and somewhere in your vehicle, but make yourselves available. And apart from making those who avail themselves, are sometimes those who are not tapped into, because our system doesn't lend itself to access that kind of a resource. And we think while we have an emerging younger generation, from prime minister all the way down, ministers of government and public servants, etc., and within even the service industry, you have, you know, younger people who are taking up serious responsibility. But the need for marrying the two, the age experience and the young, is critical. And so I believe personally, even in terms of safety, road safety or otherwise, disaster risk reduction, education or otherwise, we need to marry those, we need to bring them together, we need to collaborate and ensure that that kind of resource that we do not have to pay a lot for that is readily available. We need to tap into that a bit more.
I would certainly agree. You know, it's just a coincidence, because, you know, sometimes, as you mentioned, folks being able to carry out particular functions. And, you know, sometimes the hindrance that you find is people don't bring themselves to the forefront is because people may think, well, I never knew Sylvan went to a particular university to learn what he had. And I have experienced that with a particular individual. He knows a particular, trade or a particular area that lots of folks may have gone to university to study. But he knows it by so keenly that he hasn't been to university to study it. So you would not find me going to that particular individual because, well, I don't think GT or Sylvan have been to any university to study. And, you know, that's where we get to that problem sometimes. So we get to bring in those foreign elements to help us, because we think, well, they have been to universities and they have been to colleges and studied that. And sometimes right here in Grenada, the individuals who can do these things, you know, off the bat. We don't have to open a book and read about it, you know, or find some other source of telling them what to do. So that we don't tap into that for the reasons as I mentioned.
When you look at an aspect of it, and thanks for that, the geotechnical and geophysical studies in terms of looking at your land structure and the formation and things that may affect it and so forth. There's no resource than the experienced people who live in those areas who can tell you over a period of time what kind of changes they may have seen, and how the water flow and how the trees grow and how the wind affects certain things and how the drain and everything else were, and the movements of rocks and placements of rocks and what they could mean. And so that in itself, you really, I think one of the better universities that you can be educated is in the University of the Environment and University.
So true.
That surrounds you. If you get in tune with it, because there are times we are able to do sort of predictions without having to do technical information. There are people who would tell you that when you feel aspects, because right now, without going deep into meteorology, I'm able to almost accurately tell you when a tropical system is in the atmosphere, whether it's in our region or otherwise, because you learn to associate yourself with the atmospheric conditions, the feeling, the type of breeze, the temperature condition that you would feel, the mix of the temperature that you can feel. You can tell when there's the tropical mix and so forth. It would tell you what a tropical system brewing would feel like. The wind and the direction of wind move, the reflection and impact on the trees and how they respond to it can also tell you. Even the animals, even the insects and all these things. People have formed that kind of a relation with nature.
Yes.
And they would have seen it, and over a period of time, their own feeling and understanding would have confirmed what they actually feel. So they are now able to speak with confidence that certain things can happen or certain things will happen if certain things are not done.
And sometimes they are correct on the ball.
And then, absolutely. And the point here is, the people with that kind of a local knowledge and experience and a sense of intuition, there are people who have natural gifts.
So true.
I believe in that. And
I certainly do also.
If you came from any university or any place of learning, please do not just shelve the man or put him aside who just decide, you know what, you're going to build this retaining wall here. You're going to do a diversion of the road in this direction. But you may want to consider that. I know it has happened in a few places around Grenada where local people spoke of certain effects that could have happened, and the technical people did not listen.
Did not adhere to it, and then we see the consequences of that. So we'll be due for a break. Let's take it. We're coming right back. Stay with us, folks. It's To The Point here on Classic Radio GBN TV. We'll be right back after the break. Stay with us.
Records at the traffic department shows that a total of 1,447 accidents were reported for the year 2012, which includes 3 road fatalities. 2,946 accidents were reported for the year 2022, which includes 8 road fatalities. This is a significant increase of 104%. This is alarming. When a family tragically loses a loved one, does it matter whether by means of a gun or a motor vehicle? To avoid accidents, drivers and pedestrians alike must exercise extreme caution when using the road.
Welcome back, listeners. Welcome back, viewers. Pleasure to have you once again. And Mr. McIntyre, welcome back. Mr. McIntyre, our conversation we're going to get into this morning, accidents, emergencies. Of course, you mentioned in our introduction this morning, recent accidents occurred. Of course, you had another loss of life. Of course, you did speak about, of course, the on the same area where you lost your son just about a year ago. We continue to see the accidents occurring on this island for various reasons.
Yeah.
It could be reasons why. Of course, the appropriate driving of individuals.
Yeah.
It reasons by people driving with malfunctioning vehicles. Mm-hmm. These are also reasons why. Mm-hmm. Let us go into this a wee bit in terms of share some education with individuals.
Yeah.
Reasons why. It's important to make sure, one, your vehicle is functioning properly.
Yeah.
You understand?
Sure.
Two, reasons why individuals should not be driving inappropriately.
Yeah.
Sometimes they need. Sometimes I look at that the other day, individual overtake me on the road just to stop in front of me.
Yeah.
You understand?
Yeah.
He was like at that speed to overtake me, just to stop a few meters ahead of me.
Right.
I was wondering, what was the real reason for that? We could have just continued on our journey and you stop wherever you have to. Mm-hmm. So, we know that if the accidents occur, individuals can lose their lives. It could be various reasons. The hurt for family and all of that could cause that impact. Let's get some information on that this morning.
Yeah, well, as often said, listening for you in public or otherwise, I want you to bear with us because it is important. You may say that you've seen this, you've heard this before. We keep talking about road safety, and every time there's an accident, we come and we speak, which is true. And so there isn't enough that is being done about the things that we are saying. But the point is, we would want to reach to the point where we can all feel safer on our roads and on our streets. I'm wearing this jersey that said, "I'm Safer," which is the Asher McIntyre Safety Foundation for Roads. And we are championing the cause because we believe, as my shirt says here, every life is precious. And when we put ourselves behind a wheel or we decide to drive on our roads with any kind of vehicle, we have to understand there are a couple of factors: that every life is precious and that we are responsible for the people in our vehicles and the people who are the pedestrians on our streets. And it is with some level of regret, and I feel a bit heavier this morning because the reality of one loss of life is just one too many. And on that strip of road, the Morris Bishop Highway, that seems to have claimed more lives through a single or sometimes dual vehicle accident within the last almost 3 decades.
Yes.
It is something that our statistics is pointing to that we need to change. We've had situations where there are accidents across our country where vehicles carrying more than one person may have gotten into accident and more persons may have lost their life. But on that strip of road, we've had individuals losing their lives by just being knocked down, and that has been the predominant reason why a lot of people have lost, or the situation where a lot of people have lost their life. And between midnight and 2 a.m., 2+ this morning, regrettably again, with some pain, I saw, the lifeless body of a young man believed maybe to be a destitute or otherwise. He was naked on the street. There was no vehicle next there on where the accident occurred except that of the police and a few people who were around. And it appears again that it may have been a hit-and-run situation. I'm sure the facts, more of it, would be brought out through the process of an investigation. But as I drove from the south of the island, making my way up that highway, and coming across the police, and they said what was happening. As I got out and walked and saw that, it brought back the reality of what happened exactly personally to me just over a year ago, and it really dawned again as to how many more must die, How many more must become, sacrificed or otherwise? How many more persons should we lose before we actually see some real, tangible, physical adjustment in that area? we are very happy and comforted by the announcement by the Ministry of Works and Transport, led by our Prime Minister. That is reassuring that an overpass will be built, or overpass, or what they call flyovers, will be established in that area, and enhancing of the sidewalks in those areas also will be done as well. But while we are waiting for that to happen, people are still losing their lives. So there are a couple of questions that our viewers and followers and so forth, listeners, we would ask you to still make your contribution as to what you may think we are not doing sufficient. People may say that we've spoken about it more times and more times. And I would want to ask some of the questions too. Are our streets properly lit to accommodate the traffic and the speed at which traffic or vehicles may move in particular directions? Because you would recognize as well that the lighting on particular vehicles will extend to a particular direction.
Yes.
And so based on the speed of the vehicle, it limits your ability to see certain things given a particular period. In addition to that, many of our streets do not have street lights. And in some cases where the street lights are, they might not be reflecting and giving a true image as to the exact and more of the road space. And maybe the color of the lights and other things there could be creating blank and dark spots that could, mar the vision of drivers.
Yes.
The other question we would ask, are there sufficient road signs and indications that would allow pedestrians and other people to move around properly? Are these road signs also conspicuous, or are they displaying the type of message that pedestrians and drivers should adhere to? And the other question that we would want to ask, is our enforcement mechanism effective in combating road accidents? Or law enforcement, are they equipped? Do they have the resources to adequately combat what we see in terms of the accidents on our streets? The other question that we continue to ask is our driving and examination mechanism testing of people before a vehicle is entrusted in. How rigorous have we gone into studying the factors and making the examination to the point where it becomes very practical for people who are entrusted with that piece of instrument, that paper or otherwise, giving them authority to be on our roads? Are we seeing then that even as we're making an adjustment to the act to allow people at an earlier age to drive goods vehicle, are we saying, should we consider the age for issuance of license or otherwise? Should we consider the examination regime that I mentioned, whether it is effective, whether we should extend into having people do more real practical stuff other than some of the traditional things that we said.
That mental readiness is also important, eh?
Yeah, are we preparing them for other types of driving outside of just the rural or the urban areas?
Yeah.
Are we teaching them to be defensive drivers, or are we entrusting them with a license just to be able to drive? And the other aspect of it is our penal system.
Yeah.
The whole process of justice and everything else. When accidents occur, what are the penalties? Are they sufficient? Are they deterrents to people who are violators? And these are some questions that we would want to be able to get the feedback as we continue to see our roads with more markings that indicate that vehicles met in accidents. And we are seeing people are knocked down, struck down, and some fatal. Or are we moving rapid enough to ensure that as the number of vehicles increase on our streets and the number of persons who are getting licensed on a day-to-day basis or weekly basis, are we moving faster with the time with our safety mechanisms? And these are some of the things that we through the foundation, we want to be able to undertake to complement our transport board, our transport system, and the traffic department in understanding the mechanics of or the engineering of our streets and traffic, and what we are now trying to find out the statistics that leads to some of these causes. But as we establish in other aspects of the program, there are people who have seen things and understood things in particular areas, and they would give their own input as what they think we can do differently. And as we look at some areas that are currently are enhanced to generate to accommodate larger vehicles on our roads, we look at the Woodland Springs Junction where there's some expansion taking place.
Yes.
We look at the diversion of the road from the cliff and the Woburn Bottom section. And we would ask then, how long did we plan that activity, and did we put sufficient markings to indicate to road users that if now the Woburn Woodlands Junction becomes like a roundabout where you need to now give way to traffic on your right, should we not put up a temporary roundabout setting that says to driver, even if they're carrying a license or otherwise, that they should know they should give way to traffic on the right? But which way sometimes do you give that, coming from what direction? So sometimes there's a bottleneck in that direction because everyone wants to cross.
But if you have not sure who has the authority to
that's correct. And some people, after they've gotten the license, they forget other things, and they tend to believe at roundabouts you give way to traffic on your right, which is established in our regulation. But at a regular junction where you're now crossing, that should be now like a roundabout because multiple vehicles are converging there, should it not be then a temporary roundabout where people now understand that you give way to traffic on your right?
Yeah.
And similar as you move on into the cliff area, we believe, as we try to enhance the safety on the road, that area there should be further markings that would indicate to people, you know what, you're coming there. As we do with the mirrors all over the island now, seeing that we're putting mirrors up, we feel and we submit that there should be more road signs and more markings, and there should be there ahead of time so that people understand them, get used to them, and so that would, aid what we do. And finally, before we move into the next, we look at the expansion there on that junction with that big ties in the Woodlands Springs area.
Yes.
And they are expanding on that corner so that maybe the traffic could flow in that area easier. But we look at the Grand Etang as well. How do we prioritize? In the Grand Etang area now, you're seeing more markings coming to those corners more than we've seen before. It is an indication again that these spots, and Gigi spoke about it many, many times. Every time you drive through there, you would tell yourself, why on earth, how much does it take to expand and just break those banks, take the dirt and put it and expand on the road space itself so that the precipice become less threatening?
Yeah.
Because you take that stuff and you can put it there, so there seems to be there would be more space on the side. And the road space itself you don't even have to resurface immediately.
No.
You just have to create more view.
That make it more visual for
more
you
visual.
To see the oncoming vehicle.
And you don't need to put up so many mirrors.
No.
You need to, if we are able to excavate and cut down some of these and expand on these corners, we definitely would create better safety, in my opinion, less accidents on our road. So there are a few things we need to.
I spoke to someone about that a couple of days ago, being in Grand Etang, and they were saying, you're going to spoil the natural aesthetics, of the island and the rainforest and all of that. But I'm saying that was like years ago.
Yeah.
We think about the times now.
Yeah.
There are more vehicles using the Grand Etang area. I mean, people are going to say we constantly speaking about this,
Yeah.
But there are more vehicles using the Grand Etang area than 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Now.
Yes.
There are more people who goes to work from St. George's to Grenville now. There are more people leaving Grenville and coming to work in St. George's and uses this road on an everyday basis, at particular hours of the day. It's gone. Yeah, there are hours you pass through and it might be just you alone during the course of the day. But there are the peak hours when the traffic is moving.
Yeah. And
I think the consideration need to be given during those course of the time.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. So the fact is, I think consultation and prioritizing, it is good for the technical people to come up with what they think is their own designs and their own methods of expanding and creating and doing things for the enhancement of our thoroughfares and our roadways, etc. But it is also good to be able to factor in the contribution from the road users themselves and from the residents in particular area. Those will inform, and in most cases when you do have extensive consultation, you come up with your own decision at the end of the day. But two things you do to yourself. You console yourself that other people contributed to it, even if you make the final decision. Yeah. And the other thing about it is that the decision that you would make, you would tell yourself, listen, that wasn't just solely my decision. It was something that came because other people had a say into it. And it was not isolated to our own thinking the way we feel that it should have happened.
All right, Sylvan, we drew for a break. Let's take it. In the next segment, of course, Sylvan did pose a couple of questions. If any one of you individuals who are listening to our conversation this morning want to chime in, feel free to do so. 435-2041. After we come back from the break, we continue the conversation here on To The Point. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Jackson.
I'm Greg Jackson.
On February 19th at 4 a.m., a gun was used to take my son from me. You know him as Pop Smoke. We call him Shar. Because of gun violence, I'll never see my son run up the front of our steps, taking them two at a time. He won't ever take my hands again and dance with me. He won't come into my room and muscle pose in the mirror. Gun violence destroys families. It must stop.
Yard. Use a broom instead of a hose. Save water.
This awareness initiative is part of activities under the Climate Resilient Water sector in Grenada. The project is funded by the Green Climate Fund, the German government, and the government of Grenada.
Welcome back, listeners. Welcome back, viewers. Welcome back, Mr. Intyre. We did promise we're going to entertain a couple of phone calls in this particular segment. Let's entertain our very first caller and see what they do have to contribute to us the program this morning. Caller, welcome. Good morning.
Yes, good morning. How are you guys doing?
We're doing pretty well.
Yeah. All right. Okay. That topic was on McNaby I made a while before you all went on the break concerning Grenada. Yesterday I passed in the same area and I said this had the same sentiments. There are areas that you could cut to widen. There's a particular bridge that could be widened because it's very narrow, And there are a lot of things around that just need a little bit of infrastructural development that could be done. And I always say that we have what we call the structural contractors, like maybe the same Kenny structure and those kind of places. When they bring in equipment, the government could strike a deal with them. Look, we will give you concession, but this is what it is. We have some structures to get organized. You all do this. This is what you all will get. You understand? So, you have the country kind of involved in those kind of things like that. But again, we need to come away from all the long, the long ago thing, this narrow roads and stuff, because you have a lot of vehicles, here now. And the next thing, as I said to the police from them last week, we need to increase the traffic, the miles per hour in certain areas, because there are some drivers that drive real slow and they cause a whole backlog, a whole drag and tail traffic. So that's my contribution. Thank you.
Thank you, caller. Thank you so much. An important point there. We do have another caller. Caller via WhatsApp. Good morning. You're welcome.
Good important points.
Very, very, very important.
Good morning.
Points. Good morning to you, caller.
Yes. I told you we have police patrols on the road. In that, police at times park up in certain areas. That will deter drivers from driving reckless on the road. Because when they drive from here to Grand, 2 patrol on the road park. They go over the hills, they see a couple again. They're going up to go off, they see. And it could be on a shift system. They could work from 7 to whatever. And next shift come from whatever to whatever. You understand what I'm saying?
We do, caller, and thank you so much for your contribution. And I understand where the caller is coming from. You know, if police, we see more police presence on the road. You know, as he said, the police vehicles are parked in particular areas. It will deter drivers from wanting to drive excessive faster and so forth.
GT, last week on our program, we mentioned enhancing the physical human resource capacity of the RGPF. That has been under par for a long time. And I did speak about the reserve force and what he's saying, the deterrent factor. After we've seen the spate of shooting and so on, we've seen the police stepped up their games. They're armed with the patrol lights and everything else. But we need to see their presence, and the caller is on point. Yeah. We need to see more proactive measures and visible presence of police officers in uniform across the country.
Because, you know, when you start focusing on one area, then you know it always increases in another. You understand? Absolutely. Now we focus on more on the crime.
The crime. And then the other thing happened with the
traffic now takes up a presence.
Pick up in that end, yeah.
Let's take another caller. Caller, welcome.
Yes, gentlemen, good morning. How was your weekend?
Pretty well.
Pretty okay myself. A few points in any case. You know? Now, we traveling on road which were built in the years for donkey carts from 1492, still traveling with a vehicle, big trucks and everything traveling in the right now. So it could be the same thing. You must improve the road as time goes by. But we can't leave the same donkey cart road for all the years and one vehicle pass on it and the same wider vehicle come in, narrow roads, and I mean, it's backwardness. All leaders who go in authority, some of them have vision, some don't have no vision at all. They just go in authority, get money on the month up, and run out the helter-skelter from day one, same thing back over and over. We tell me get men with vision to build this little country. We are a small little country to build, to go forward. But just a matter of people in authority feel them know it all, and who get advice, them know it. So them do what they want. You know, it's time that we build solid roads, foundation-wise. I'll be concrete road better. I think concrete road is much better than putting tar. You go put the tar on top of the concrete. But concrete road, for you get a solid foundation. Run the pipes on the both sides of the roads. Not putting pipe in the middle of the road and to bust the pipe, to bust the road to get a pipe on the left hand side and the right hand side. Put pipes on the both sides of the road. You have to live in left and right. Right. You concrete the road. All the roads, concrete it. And you put tar on top of it. Build the road in a slopey way. Not this kind of flat biscuit road, you build and water settling like a swimming pool and this one, you know, and kind of things. We ain't really for that yet, you know. It's time we put together and foot into go forward. We spending money today, some money tomorrow, you come again and spend the same money again tomorrow again, same program again tomorrow, sorry, come again this next week, same money and same program again. Build in a way, you can go forward for 100 years in a no road infrastructure. Put solid concrete roads and put on top of it. Widen the road on the sea coast.
Thank you, caller. Thank you. Thank you so much for your contribution this morning. I'm seeing a comment here from someone via the WhatsApp, and it's interesting. Of course, Sylvan, listen to this. They're saying, please, don't waste money on overpass and flyover and flyover. Nobody's going to climb in and put them into if they're not put into strategic places. They're saying, and of course, they're saying crosswalking with a button to flash the stop signs for traffic. And enforcement courts in law is of course, is mostly that how individual would abide. So of that nature.
Right. Good. So while we respect the contributions from every caller and every writer, the two broad things. What's the causes of the accidents and what things have been done about them.
Yeah.
Those are the two factors that we would want to, because some things that we may contribute to and so on, we may say enhancing aesthetics and other things, but are they contributing towards better safety, or are they contributing factors to accidents?
Yeah.
And we want to be able to zero in on that. And some of them we'll probably touch again at the end of the program, but the callers are making their contributions, and some of them are actually saying what they think we can do differently, which is really, really useful.
Guess we lost that caller there. Seem to be getting this caller seem to be calling and disconnecting for someone. Most time I try. Let's try this caller again. Caller, good morning, you're welcome.
Yeah, that call was a girl. The accident happening for the past years gone by. Is there any elderly people involved in the accident, or young people alone? Young people have a style, show off, flash, and feel the car is a plane. And then fly with it on the earth and thing. In any case, a car is a fragile thing they have. It's an engine. So when you're flying with a car with a biscuit surround it, when you crash, what happens? You're dying in it, you know. It's young people who get an accident. All that's happening in young people. They just show up onto boats and to brag and show up and thing with a vehicle and thing and getting on gallop and thing with a vehicle and spreading joy and feel like life. Not a plane. It's a car you have. You're fragile. It's a biscuit.
Thank you, caller. Thank you, caller. Thank you so much. Let's entertain another caller via WhatsApp. Good morning. You're welcome.
Good morning, Mr. Telesford and Mr. McIntyre. Good morning to you. Mr. McIntyre, as you are on road safety and accident and different things also, have you ever consider or think about the EV vehicles, the electric vehicles? Yes, they have a horn, but they have very little and no sound, and they could drive up close beneath you, close behind you, sorry. You know, in Grenada, people famous for jaywalking. They leave the sidewalk and walk in the middle of the road. I'm thinking that if we're talking about electric vehicles on the road, we really have to educate people as much, because these vehicles, they don't have no heavy sound. You may hear the engine apart from the horn, you may hear the engine of a vehicle. And that will alert you that there is an oncoming vehicle. But the EV vehicles, they can only alert you by the tooting of the horn. So I think that is something maybe you could look at in terms of road safety as we progress, and the type of vehicles that will be coming on the market, that we ought to start being proactive and teaching people as to road safety and how they walk in the road, on the road, sidewalk, and crossing the road and things of that. So thank you very much.
Thank you, caller. Thank you, and very relevant point there.
Yeah, and I really thank the caller for the insight, all the EVs and so forth. But unless and until we've enhanced and create the enabling environment for pedestrians and others, we would not be able to convince ourselves that the EVs and other vehicles could be the contributing factors. In long term, yes, we need to educate people, but if we create the physical infrastructure that would channel people into behaving and doing certain things, they don't necessarily need to be allotted by songs and other things, while it is important. But if we give them sidewalks to walk, you can walk on the sidewalks. If we give them those opportunities, said that's where you use these and so forth, you necessarily need to hear and so on. But there are other aspects where there would not be sidewalks and other things, and if we have a majority or more of these electric vehicles in, it creates another concern. So the whole education process and causing people to become more situationally aware, to be aware of what's happening in your, because people get distracted by the gadgets. They are not mentally prepared for the road because they may have had their social problems or otherwise, domestic otherwise, and they take it to the streets. And oftentimes you drive around, move around, you honk your horns otherwise, and people will just jump otherwise because their mindset is not where their body is.
It's so true. Let's entertain another caller. Caller, good morning, you're welcome.
Oh, yes, good morning to you, GT, and how are you today?
We're doing pretty well. We're doing pretty well.
We're all right.
Good morning, Mr. McIntyre, sir. I'll tell you something. You're such a phenomenon. You know, what is going through my mind? I wonder if you could set up a set. It is possible to be a candidate in each of the parish, so that you could be the government. You know, prime minister and government. And then you'll choose people for the various arms of the department. You know, that's how you song, sir. You cover everything. And I'm wondering if they're not listening to you. Because there's nothing else to add in terms of what you're seeing there. A hate is pervading over the island. You know, this hate. And the people sometimes they see you and they don't see you. The stress is coming on everybody, you know. But I'm wondering if we can't actually use the highway code as part of the qualifying instrument for driving. So if we're going to charge you, we charge you under the highway code, yeah? Not only the insurance and the driver's license, but also the highway code. So that should be a requirement. These three instruments should be. So when we're going to charge you, yes, you have your license, yes, you have the insurance, but you see you violate the highway code, we charge you on the highway code, because highway code have the regulation. But there's another thing I am looking at, sir. We have so much vehicles going to the south, yeah? We have what you call 8 to 4, yeah? And everybody's hustling. Compound, we have oversupply of commerce in the south. If we're going to urbanize or develop the rural areas so that people could stay in their respective parish, don't you think that will aid in cutting down some of the unnecessary accidents we have? Because sometimes people hustling to pay the bank, they're hustling to pay the insurance, so those things is going to happen. So we have to put our management gear in full force. I think outside of the box with a view to solving those problems rather than trying to react when something happens. I believe if we try those strategies, all of the strategies are in this, we're going to be in a much better place. Thank you, sir. Have a good day.
Thank you so much.
That caller is so really on point, and the last few comments in terms of decentralization of resources and access to facilities across country. I think that we started that a few years ago, where we brought the banks and other things, and utility companies. You can pay at the banks and pay in sub offices and so forth. But I think some of our more public service infrastructure and functions could be greater enhanced, and that would limit movement. But I just want to, before we take the other caller, he spoke about the highway code. And I think if you read the highway code and so on, it prepares you maybe more for an international setting where you can drive. But we need to also look at tweaking and making a local code and an examination system that speaks to what you're likely to meet in Grenada, and aspects of it should be aligned to the exam. And finally, I also think outside of the regular exams that people do and the driving tests, we must bring defensive driving as a separate component, and that must also be aligned to the penal system, that when people are found in violation of the law and so forth, they should be sent to do a defensive driving. And people who are required to drive public vehicles like the buses and other, like the physically challenged people and all that, you should be mandated to do a defensive driving course and not just license to drive a vehicle. So those two pieces of instruments, tweak the highway code to the local condition and create a mandatory defensive driving, because I've done it. And it is totally different to what we teach people to be able to just drive a vehicle and be on the road.
Yeah, because it's so true. Because I always look at the highway code and I said, it doesn't say nothing about Grenada in it. It doesn't display anything that we see locally on our roads.
Absolutely.
Because half of the things, after you obtain your license and so forth, whatever is in the code, it seems to be of no use to you.
Yes.
For some reason or the other. Let's take another caller. Caller, welcome. Good morning.
Hi, good morning to you and to Superintendent McIntyre. Did I hear something to the thought that there's another pedestrian fatality this morning?
Sir, Morris Bishop Highway, the same exact spot where my son died a year ago.
Was it this morning it happened?
Yes, it's early, between midnight and 2 a.m. because just after 2 a.m. I was in the area. I actually physically saw the body on the ground.
oh boy, this is so sad. And, well, I don't know how it happened. Nobody knows. And we don't want to speak too much with the facts. But there is something that to me is very important. This morning I was walking. I do walking most mornings. And I was on a stretch of road where there was a sidewalk. And everybody tends to gravitate towards where the sidewalk is. It's a newly constructed sidewalk. And there was a lady walking in the opposite direction. I was on the sidewalk. And she left the sidewalk and stepped into the street. And I said, oh, no, this is your sidewalk. And I stepped into the street and went onto the other side because I was branching off shortly thereafter. And I'm saying that to say that the vast majority of people in this country do not know that there is a safe side of the road to walk. Some years ago, I met a relative who just was fresh from training in the police force, and I said to him, so how are you doing? He said he just went through all the rotations, all the different departments. I said, did you do traffic? He said, yes. So I asked him, what is the safe side of the road to walk? He said, is there a correct side of the road to walk? He just finished his stint in traffic. And if you had been mentioned some years ago, the guys doing the training of the new recruits, the moment these recruits get onto the road, they become vehicles. They become motor vehicles. They keep left. And as a child, I was taught that you walk on the right side of the road so that you face oncoming traffic. Somebody may bung away, somebody may lose control, but at least you are facing the traffic that is most likely to come on to your side. I don't know if you have emphasized that in previous programs, but I would say, from my understanding, the majority of people in this country, and even a number of the police force members, do not know that. And I don't know how much more we can emphasize that. I walk almost every morning, different places. And people are exercising. It's very, very good to keep active. But most times they are walking with the vehicles at the back. It doesn't take much for someone to lose control and to hit you. You can still die if you're walking on the correct side. But I don't know, have you mentioned that in other programs? I mean, do we really drill that? I was taught that in primary school by a police officer who came into the school when I was a very young child, and I never forgot that. You walk on the right side of the road, so you face the oncoming traffic. And I think that will avoid a lot of the near misses and may even save lives. I just thought I should mention it for whatever it's worth.
All right, thank you, Glen.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
That's so important. But to complement what he said, this is absolutely correct, but we have to improve our physical infrastructure, because at times walking on the right is not always, and most times, the way the things are designed, it channels you into doing the opposite.
Yeah.
Because if you take, for instance, the Morris Bishop Highway, where we're losing people every year at least, the right side of the road, if you're coming up, there's no sidewalk. There are all businesses on that side, but there are no sidewalks. So people then using that direction, if they come in, they would probably use the other side.
Yeah.
And so they're not going in line with it. So if you're coming up, obviously, from the airport side, you should be coming up on that side where the ACE and other places are.
Okay.
Because you're facing the oncoming traffic, and that's the proper thing to do.
Yeah.
But even if you're doing that, yes, your chances of veering away or getting away from a runaway vehicle, otherwise, you have more chance of saving your life than doing the opposite thing. But then again, you're still being placed at risk because the enabling environment is not created. The physical infrastructure doesn't allow it to even make you feel comfortable in walking, facing the oncoming traffic. Because the speed at which some people actually coming, you just tell yourself you don't want to be seeing or feeling that coming towards you.
Okay, all right. Mr. Mack, we almost strapped for time. We are a little after 10 a.m. this morning. Any closing comments before we take a wrap this morning?
Yeah, I just want to again send out empathy and sympathy to the relatives of the person who lost their life tragically. Every life is precious, and it appears to have been a destitute person. I'm not sure, but the underlying factor, every life is important. And as we traverse, as we drive along our streets, we must be conscious that every life is important. and we have something to do with it. Take it away or to preserve it.
All right. Hey, folks, as we take a wrap for this edition of To The Point for today, join us again for another edition tomorrow, once your money permits. Have yourself a good one, folks. That's what we say. Goodbye. Have a good one.